So friends, today we are going to discuss 5 important topics from environment and ecology perspective. These topics have been in news like time and again in 2019 as well as in 2020. So these topics I think are important for the prelims exam of this year. Okay. So I'll be showing you like on your screen, you'll be able to see, okay, these topics. Okay. So today we are going to discuss these like 5 important topics. The topics are Global Futures Report. We will learn about the global economy, green economy. We will see the payment for ecosystem services. Then we will understand about environmental and social management framework. Then global assessment report, GAR. Okay, so these are the important topics. Now let us understand about the Global Futures Report. Okay, Global Futures Report. Why it was in news? Because recently the Global Futures assessing the global economic impact of environmental change to support policy making was released jointly by the Wide Fund for Nature. In short, it is known as WWF. Okay, this organization is known as WWF, the Global Trade Analysis Project, and the Capital Project. Okay, so these three organizations together published this particular report, which is named as Global Futures, assessing the global economic impact of environmental change to support policy making. Okay, so what is this report all about? So let us learn about this report. This report reveals for the first time the countries whose economies would be worst affected over the next 30 years. Okay, this report talks about that those countries whose economies would be worst affected over the next years if the world does not act urgently to address the global environmental crisis. Okay, so the thing is, this particular report links to existing models. What are the existing models? One of the model is the integrated valuation of ecosystem services and trade-offs model. Okay, like this particular model comes from the Natural Capital Project. Okay, Natural Capital Project. So we have seen this particular organization that was a part of this particular report. Okay, so they have together published this report. So the integrated valuation of ecosystem services and trade-offs model from the Natural Capital Project, which is a high resolution global ecosystem service model. Then the Global Trade Analysis Project, okay, Computable General Equilibrium. Global Trade Analysis Project, GTAP, Computable General Equilibrium, CGE model from the Purdue University, which is used to analyze the policy issues like trade and energy. Okay. If we talk about key findings of this particular report, okay, so it has important findings. One of the finding is, in the business as usual scenario, reduced supply of the 6 ecosystem services would lead to a 0.67% drop in the annual global GDP by 2050. The sustainable pathway scenario, which pushes the sustainability goals, will by 2050 result in GDP losses of 0.18%, which is equivalent to US $129 billion per year. Okay, so this is like, what are the important things that we should remember from this report, Global Futures Report? We should learn the full name of this report. The name is Global Futures, assessing the global economic impact of environmental change to support policy making. And it has been launched by 3 bodies together. What are those 3 bodies? Okay, so body number 1, Natural Capital Project. Second body is the Global Trade Analysis Project, and this is the third body, which is the Worldwide Fund for Nature. These are the 3 bodies that they have together launched this report. And this report, models like use links to existing models. These models are integrated valuation of ecosystem services and trade-offs, then Global Trade Analysis Project, Computable General Equilibrium. Okay, these are the 2 things that this project links with. Okay, so now let us move to the next topic. Next topic is green economy. We will understand about green economy now. We will see why it was in news. So recently, the renowned environmental economist, his name is Pawan Sukhdev, he was awarded the 2020 Tyler Prize for his work in the domain of green economy. Okay, so that's why it was in news. So it becomes important for us to understand what is green economy. Okay, we have understood the context in which it was in news because Pawan Sukhdev, who is an Indian, he has been awarded the 2020 Tyler Prize for his work in the domain of green economy. So we will understand what is Tyler Prize for environmental achievement. We will understand about green economy. We will understand about associated, environmental bodies with this particular topic. Okay. So as per the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, green economy is one that improves human well-being and builds social equity while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities. Okay, this is the thing. So other details are mentioned over here. You can read it, read in your free time. So if we talk about Pawan Sukhdev, who was awarded the Tyler Prize, so Pawan Sukhdev's groundbreaking 2008 report, he had published a report in the year 2008, and that report is named as the Economics of Environment and Biodiversity. In short, EEB, okay? The Economics of Environment and Biodiversity. This report was hosted by the United Nations Environment Program and became the foundation for green economy movement. Okay, in 2008, United Nations Environment Program launched the Green Economy Initiative, which is a program of global research and country level assistance designed to motivate policymakers to support environmental investments. The transition towards green economy has global importance, but it's more significant. But it is more significant for developing countries like India with its associated benefits and cost. Okay, so now let us understand about Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement. This is the this is the prize that has been awarded to Pawan Sukhdev. Okay, so this particular Tyler Prize was established in 1973. It is one of the oldest international environmental awards, recognizing individuals who have contributed in an outstanding manner to the scientific knowledge and public leadership to preserve and enhance the global environment. Its recipients encompass the spectrum of environmental concerns, including environmental policy, health, air and water pollution, ecosystem disruption, and loss of biodiversity and energy resources. It is awarded by the International Tyler Prize Executive Committee. Okay, so it is awarded by the International Tyler Prize Executive Committee with the administrative support of the University of Southern California. Okay, so they get some support from the University of Southern California. So now let us understand about this, the economics of environment and biodiversity. So this is a report that has been published by Pawan Sukhdev in the year of 2018, and that has become a ground for the movement towards green economy. Okay, so that's why it becomes important for us to learn about the economics of environment and biodiversity. Okay, in 2007, G8 plus 5 countries, including India, proposed to initiate the process of analyzing the global economic benefit of biological diversity, the cost of the loss of biodiversity, and the failure to take protective measures versus the cost of effective conservation. Okay, so the thing is, in 2017, okay, G8 plus 5 countries, that includes India also, they proposed to initiate the process of analyzing the global economic benefit of biological diversity. Okay, then in response to this, a global study was conducted by Germany and the European Commission under Pawan Sukhdev, which led to the establishment of the Economics of Environment and Biodiversity, TEEB. Okay, based in Geneva, Switzerland, at the International Environment House. The TEEB office is hosted by the United Nations Environment Program. Another important thing from this particular report is in 2010, in October 2010, it released its report, Mainstreaming the Economics of Nature, a synthesis of the approach, conclusion, and recommendation of TEEB, which stands for the Economics of Environment and Biodiversity, okay, and launched the Bank of Natural Capital, okay. So other things you can read it, okay. Like I strongly recommend you to go through this particular PDF once I share it with you. So let us understand what do we mean by natural capital, okay. Natural capital has been referred in the previous topic over here because they have launched the Bank of Natural Capital. So it becomes important, what do we understand by natural capital? Okay, natural capital is the stock of renewable and non-renewable resources that combine to yield a flow of benefit to people. Okay, natural capital is the stock of renewable and non-renewable resources. Okay, that combine to yield a flow of benefit to people. It is a way of describing a resource, environment, habitat, or ecosystem that underpins ecosystem service benefits. Okay, and this is sometimes called as flow. For example, a pollinator habit. So like these things you can read yourself. Natural capital includes all renewable and non-renewable resources that combine and that combine together and give some benefit to the people. Okay, I have included image for you also to understand it better. Now let us move to the third topic for the day. The third topic is payment for ecosystem services. Okay, this is the next topic that we are going to understand. This is payment for ecosystem services. Why it was in news? Because the result of the India's first ever payment for ecosystem services agreement in India have started showing up. Okay, so it was India's first ever payment for ecosystem services agreement. Its result is being, is showing up. That's why it was in news. So we will understand what do we mean by payment for ecosystem services, and we will understand like which organizations or village or like which areas or like which organization have signed this particular agreement. So let us see. The first ever payment for ecosystems services agreement was signed between, okay, this is one party, which is the Village Forest Development Society, VFDS, and the Palampur Municipal Council. Okay, these two bodies together signed the payment for ecosystem services agreement for the first time. Okay, one of the bodies, Village Forest Development Society, VFDS, and Palampur Municipal Council, okay, which is in Himachal Pradesh, okay, formalized in 2010. It is a rural urban engagement model. Okay, it is a rural urban engagement model for the sustainable supply of water and protection of the catchment area. So let us understand about payment for ecosystem services. What do we mean by this? Okay, so I'll explain you with the help of the image that you can see on your screen. Okay, so on your screen you can see this particular image. So this image, like if you focus on the image itself, so it seems like there is a upper hilly region from where river is flowing downstream, and in the downstream cities are located. Okay, so like on the right hand side over here, okay, cities are located. Okay, and cities are located where? They are located in the downstream area. Okay, so they are the people who are the beneficiaries of the fresh water that they are receiving from the hilly terrains or hilly areas. And people who stay over in the hilly area, okay, like people who stay in this hilly area or upper catchment area or upstream community, they are the ones who are conserving the ecosystem services in their area. So the thing is, the work that is done by the people who are in the upstream community, who are in the upstream, okay, their work, like based on their work, the people who are residing in the cities in the downstream, okay, they are getting benefited. So it becomes imperative for, like it becomes an obligation for the people of the downstream area, who are getting benefit out of the natural resources that they are receiving from the upper area, to in return to give some benefit to the people of the upstream community. So this, if there is a formal agreement between the two, means like upstream community and the downstream people, okay, if there is some agreement, okay, that agreement is known as payment for ecosystem services. Okay, ecosystem services are provided by the upstream community to the downstream people, and in return the downstream community is paying some payment, giving some payment to the upstream community. This is like payment for ecosystem services. So let us understand through this image itself. Okay, so we will begin it from here. Okay, so just follow my cursor over here. So number one, downstream water users, okay, beneficiaries of the watershed services. So if we talk about people who are residing in the cities in the downstream, they are the beneficiaries of the watershed services that they are receiving from the upstream. So in return, what they are doing, they are making some payment. Okay, they are making some payment. Okay, these payment may be in terms of cash, assistance, materials, etc. Okay, so these payments may be in terms of cash. Okay, just allow me a minute. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, just a minute. I'm sorry for the interruption. Okay, so what we are discussing now, we are discussing that the people who are staying in the downstream. Okay, so they are making some payment so that like they can give some assistance to the people who are conserving the watershed. Okay, the payment may be in terms of cash, maybe in terms of assistance in implementation of the projects, in terms of materials. Okay, so the people from the downstream may give material, may give cash, may give assistance. Okay, so in return what happens, the upstream community over here, the upstream community, okay, they are the ones who stewards and provides, they are the providers of watershed services. Then these watershed services, how it happens, they may plant some trees. Okay, so if they are planting some of the trees over there, what impact is happening? Watershed services, okay, like water purification is happening, flood risk mitigation is happening, aquifer recharge is happening, then erosion minimization is happening. So all these things are happening. So are you understanding, the people who are residing in the upstream community, they are giving some services. Okay, they are giving some ecosystem services to the people of the downstream community, and in return the people from the downstream community, they are either making the payment in cash, they are giving some assistance in implementing the project, or they are giving some materials to the people of the downstream community. Okay, so are you understanding this thing? So having understood this thing, okay, so this is based on the principle which is known as beneficiary pays principle. Okay, it is known as beneficiary pays principle. What it simply means, that the people from the downstream, they are getting benefits of the ecosystem services that are provided by the upstream community, and that's why the downstream people are paying. Okay, so beneficiaries are paying. Okay, so I hope it was understood. Now let us move to the next topic, fourth topic for the day. Now we will understand about the like environmental and social management framework. Okay, environmental and social management framework. The topics that I have included today, most of these topics are very conceptual in nature. You need to give a second reading to these topics to understand them fully, and at the same time revise it properly. Okay, because it is a very conceptual in nature. Okay, topic is conceptual. Now let us understand environmental and social management framework. What is it, why it was in news, okay, and what is the background of this particular thing. So we will understand environmental and social management framework. Why it was in news? Because recently the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, in short it is known as MOEFCC, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, released the environmental and social management framework in public domain. Okay, so this environmental ministry has released this particular environmental and social management framework in public domain. That's why it was in news. So what is this? Okay, so let us learn some background to this thing. The draft environmental and social management framework is a part of the World Bank funded project. Okay, it is a part of the World Bank funded project named ENCORE. Okay, what is ENCORE? ENCORE stands for Enhancing Coastal and Ocean Resource Efficiency Program. Full form of ENCORE is Enhancing Coastal and Ocean Resource Efficiency Program, which aims to strengthen integrated coastal zone management program. Okay, in short, ICZMP. What is ICZMP? integrated coastal zone management program, okay, in all coastal states and union territories of India. Once again, okay, the draft environmental and social management framework is a part of the World Bank funded project named ANCOR, which aims to strengthen integrated coastal zone management program in all states and union territories of India. Okay. Then the environmental and social management framework has been prepared with an objective to manage the social and environmental impacts through appropriate measures during the planning, design, construction, and operation of various sub-projects of ANCOR. Okay. Now, if we talk about what is this all about, it is a tool for ANCOR program. What we are talking about, environmental and social management framework. Okay. So environmental and social management framework is a tool for ANCOR program to screen the sub projects, to categorize them based on defined criteria, and to decide on how to manage these using either full-fledged ESIA. ESIA stands for Environmental and Social Impact Assessment, and ESMPs, Environmental and Social Management Plan. Okay, so I'll read it again for you. The Environmental and Social Management Framework is a tool for ANCOR program to screen the sub-projects, to categorize them based on defined criteria, and to decide on how to manage these using either the full-fledged environmental and social impact assessment and environmental and social management plan. Okay. Then there is a society, it is known as the Society of Integrated Coastal Management, in short SICOM, which works under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, is the nodal project management unit. Okay. So this SICOM is the nodal National Project Management Unit. Okay, it is the National Project Management Unit for ICZMP and ANCOR program. What is ICZMP? It is Integrated Coastal Zone Management Program. And ANCOR, we have understood what is ANCOR. ANCOR stands for Enhancing Coastal and Ocean Resource Efficiency Program. So I hope it was understood. Okay. The thing is, why this environmental and social management framework was in news, because Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has released the environmental and social management framework in the public domain. And this environmental and social management framework is a part of the World Bank funded project. The name of the project is ANCOR, which is Enhancing Coastal and Ocean Resource Efficiency Program, which aims to strengthen integrated coastal zone management program. Okay, so that's why. And the SICOM under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the National Project Management Unit for ICZMP as well as ANCOR program. So this is all about this topic. Now let us move to the fifth topic for the day, which is Global Assessment Report. Okay, we will understand about Global Assessment Report. We will see why it was in news. Okay. So recently the Global Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction was launched. Okay. Let us learn about Global Assessment Report. It is published biannually. Okay. Biannually means it is published once in every 2 years. Okay. It is published biannually by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and is product of contributions of nations, public and private disaster risk related science and research amongst other. Okay, so this thing, if we talk about Global Assessment Report, it is not, it is not a report published single-handedly by any organization. It is a product of contributions of nations, public and private. Okay, private disaster risk related science and research. This is the thing. And it is published once every 2 years by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Okay, UNDRR, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Then what is United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction? We will understand this thing. Okay, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction was established in 1999 as part of the United Nations Secretariat. It serves as the focal point for the coordination of disaster reduction and to ensure synergies amongst the disaster reduction activities of the United Nations system and regional organizations. Okay, it supports the implementation, follow-up and review of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Okay, this is very important information. That's why I have highlighted it. Okay, this, okay, this particular body like United Nations, okay, like the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction supports the implementation, follow-up and review of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Okay, then United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction is 99.2% funded through voluntary contributions from diverse set of donors. Okay, so more than 99% of the fund, okay, for this body comes from diverse and voluntary contribution from, you know, diverse set of donors. And what are the findings of the global assessment report? So we are understanding here findings of the global assessment report, GAR. Okay, Asia Pacific region accounts for 40% of the global economic losses due to extreme climate changes, with the greatest impact in the largest economies of Japan, China, Korea, and India. Then economic losses to the extent of 4% of GDP annually are projected if countries don't invest in a disaster risk reduction. So they are saying that economic losses to the extent of 4% of GDP annually are projected. Okay, so 4% of the GDP can be lost if, you know, like people don't invest in disaster risk reduction. So there are some related information related to this topic. Okay, then first National Conference on Coastal Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience 2020. What it is, we will understand. Okay, this is a conference. This is the first national conference on coastal disaster risk reduction and resilience. Okay, so this conference was organized by the National Institute for Disaster Management in New Delhi. Okay, then the thing is, what is this National Institute for Disaster Management? It is a body that works under the Ministry of Home Affairs, and this body was constituted under the Disaster Management Act of 2005. Okay, and this NIDM has been entrusted with the nodal national responsibility for human resource development, capacity building, training, research, documentation, and policy advocacy in the field of disaster management. Okay, then there is some related information. This is Sasakawa Award. Okay, what is Sasakawa Award? We will understand. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, during the sixth session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Geneva, conferred Sasakawa Award to Dr. Pramod Kumar Mishra. Okay, then United Nations Sasakawa Award is the most prestigious international award in the areas of disaster management. Okay, so if we talk about Sasakawa Award, it is associated with the United Nations. Okay, so the thing is, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, you know, like gives this particular award. Okay, and it is the most prestigious international award in the area of disaster risk management. Okay, then some information is given related to Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. Why it is included over here? Because we have seen that the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, they also oversee the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Okay, that's why it was in news. Okay, and then Sendai Framework outlines 7 global targets to be achieved by 2030. What are those 7 global targets? They have been listed over here. So I'll take you through all these topics one by one. Okay, so just allow me a minute. Okay, so I'll take you through all these topics one by one. Okay, so what are the 7 targets? Okay, the Sendai Framework outlines 7 global targets to be achieved by 2030. What are those 7 targets? Number 1, reduce global disaster mortality. Number 2, okay, reduce the number of affected people globally. Third, reduce direct economic losses in relation to gross domestic product. Fourth, reduce disaster damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services. Fifth, increase the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. Sixth, substantially enhance international cooperation to developing countries. Then seventh, increase the availability of and access to multi-hazards early warning systems. Okay, so these are the, you know, these are the 7 targets, 7 global targets outlined under Sendai Framework. for disaster risk reduction, and they have to be achieved by the year 2030. Now, the first four targets are the targets for reductions. Okay, so they want that substantial reduction should happen in these four areas, and the next three targets are substantial increase should happen in these three areas. So that's why the four targets have been grouped together and the other three targets have been grouped together. Okay, so I hope these topics were understood properly. So with this, I conclude today's discussion from my end. Okay, so any one of you having any question, you can ask your question. Okay, so I'll be available to answer your question now.